With its clumsy recruits and uproarious laughter, Police Academy became a comedic symbol of the 1980s. But behind the spotlight, many talented actors who gifted us unforgettable moments in the franchise have now left us forever. Some passed too soon, due to unexpected accidents or dark tragedies we could hardly imagine. In this video, we pay tribute to the late stars of Police Academy, honoring the legacy and lasting impact they left on screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's dive in. Bubba Smith as Moses Hightower. Charles Aaron Bubba Smith was born on February 28, 1945, in Texas. When he was 39 years old, he became unforgettable to global audiences as Moses Hightower, the gentle giant officer in Police Academy from Part 1 through Part 6. Beyond his comedic persona, Bubba had once been a football legend in the NFL, selected first overall in the 1967 draft and winner of Super Bowl V with the Baltimore Colts. Yet, behind the athletic and cinematic glory was a life marked by silent suffering. Bubba never married and lived alone in Los Angeles, battling long-term physical damage from years of brutal sports collisions. Chronic injuries led to a dependence on painkillers, and gradually, a spiral into depression. Illness eroded his body while the image of being a steel hero became a psychological weight he couldn't shed. On August 3, 2011, Bubba Smith was found dead in solitude at the age of 66. The cause, acute drug intoxication and heart failure. An autopsy later confirmed he had CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, commonly seen in contact sport athletes. His heart at the time of death weighed twice the normal amount, a devastating symbol of the cost of athletic glory. Marian Ramsay as Laverne Hooks. Marian Ramsay was born on May 10, 1947, in Philadelphia. When she was 37 years old, she etched herself into cinematic history with her role as Officer Laverne Hooks, the shy yet surprisingly brave policewoman in Police Academy, Parts 1 through 6. Her soft, high-pitched voice became iconic, making Hooks a character audiences could never forget. But that same role ultimately became a gilded cage, trapping Ramsay in a single on-screen identity. Heavily typecast, Ramsay was rarely offered other roles. Hollywood couldn't see beyond that squeaky voice from Police Academy, overlooking the fact that she was also a gifted stage actress who had performed on Broadway and toured nationally in Hello, Dolly. Her personal life mirrored her professional frustration. After a failed marriage, Marian withdrew from romantic relationships altogether. With no children and no close family, she lived alone in her Los Angeles home. In her final years, Marian's health declined quickly. Although no specific cause of death was made public, she had experienced a brief illness before passing away on January 7, 2021, at the age of 73. Her close friend Nell Carter once revealed that Marian was deeply private, often hiding her pain behind her smile. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was around $500,000, a modest figure compared to the emotional mark she left on audiences. But the greatest tragedy was not material. It was being trapped in a role so successful she never got the chance to truly be seen for who she was. George Gaines as Eric Lassard. George Gaines was born on May 16, 1917, in Helsinki. A Dutch-Russian talent who served in the Royal Netherlands Navy during World War II before becoming a U.S. citizen, he was 67 years old when he won hearts worldwide as Commandant Eric Lassard, the bumbling but lovable leader across all 7 Police Academy films. With his calm voice, innocent expression, and hilariously well-meaning antics, he became the soul of the series, a role no one could replace. But behind the long-spanning career and that lovable persona was a life filled with deeper chapters. Gaines had once been a soldier in Sicily, Anzio, and the Adriatic, history that Hollywood rarely acknowledged. He shared a long and happy marriage with actress Alan Ann McClary, but tragedy struck in 1989 when their son Matthew, a former Olympic kayaker, died in a car accident in India. It was a loss that scarred Gaines deeply, and many believed he became more withdrawn after that moment. In his final years, his health declined, failing eyesight, fading memory, but he retained the grace and kindness that defined both him and Commandant Lassard. On February 15, 2016, George Gaines passed away at his daughter's home in North Bend, Washington, at the age of 98. He left behind an estimated estate of $2 million, a modest home, and millions of smiles gifted to audiences around the world. David Graff as Eugene Tackleberry. Paul David Graff was born on April 16, 1950, in Zanesville, Ohio. When he was 34 years old, he made cinematic history with his defining role, Sergeant Eugene Tackleberry in Police Academy. As a gun-obsessed yet fiercely loyal and sincere officer, Graff's Tackleberry became a lasting icon across all 7 films, his character forever etched into the laughter of millions around the world. But behind that explosive humor was a life filled with quiet heartbreak. Despite a steady career with guest appearances in hit shows like Star Trek, Seinfeld, The West Wing, and Home Improvement, Graff never escaped the shadow of Tackleberry. A familiar face on television, he nonetheless struggled with a lingering sense of inadequacy, haunted by the belief that he would forever be just a supporting hero, never a true star. Contrary to some false reports, David Graff married only once, to actress Katharine Graff in 1983. They had 2 sons together, yet the pressure of constant work and a relentless pace left him frequently stressed. As an active representative of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, he tirelessly championed the rights of fellow actors, but seemed to neglect his own well-being. On April 7, 2001, just 9 days shy of his 51st birthday, David Graff died suddenly of a heart attack while attending his brother-in-law's wedding in Phoenix, Arizona. He passed away with his career still in motion, leaving behind his wife, children, friends, and heartbroken fans. He was laid to rest at Forest Rose Cemetery in Ohio, the hometown that once nurtured his early dreams of the stage. His estimated estate was around $500,000, but the greatest legacy he left behind was the laughter and sincerity he brought to every role. David Graff's tragedy was not simply his early death, but the deep frustration of being boxed into a single character, despite being an actor who gave his all both in front of and behind the camera. Dar Robinson as Thug in Plaid. Dar Allen Robinson was born on March 26, 1947, in Los Angeles, raised among trampolines, training mats, and a love for danger. When he was 37 years old, he appeared in Police Academy, 1984, as a plaid-clad thug, a small role that barely hinted at his larger-than-life legacy. With 19 world records and 21 firsts in death-defying feats, Dar Robinson wasn't just a stuntman, he was a living legend in Hollywood, until the day he didn't land. Robinson was the first person to jump from the 700-foot CN Tower, fall 220 feet from the Hyatt Regency, launch a vehicle across the rim of the Grand Canyon, and free fall from a helicopter at 311 feet. All meticulously calculated. He never broke a bone in 13 years. But in cruel irony, his only fatal fall wasn't even a major stunt. On November 21, 1986, on the set of Million Dollar Mystery, Robinson had completed the film's main stunt. While performing a simple motorcycle chase for supplemental shots, not even a scheduled stunt, he lost control and plunged off a cliff, dying instantly at age 39. The medical team had already left the scene, believing the dangerous part of the shoot was over. His estate was estimated at $300,000. He had experienced a failed marriage and left behind 2 sons, including Sean Robinson, who followed in his father's footsteps as a stuntman before also dying young from heart failure. Close friends recalled that Dar lived with a constant awareness of death, and in some ways had already made peace with it. George R. Robertson as Henry J. Hearst. George Ross Robertson was born on April 20th, 1933 in Canada. When he was 51 years old, he became a familiar face to global audiences as Chief Henry J. Hearst in the Police Academy franchise. With a mix of sternness and dry wit, he brought gravitas to a role that appeared in the first 6 films from 1984 to 1989. Hearst's scowling exterior concealed a heart of reluctant tolerance, endearing him to fans for decades. Yet after Police Academy, George R. Robertson chose a quieter path, far from the noise of Hollywood. Despite appearing in 3 Oscar-nominated films, Airport, Norma Ray, and JFK, he remained a humble, hard-working character actor, far more devoted to the craft than to fame. His personal life, however, told a more fractured story. 2 failed marriages left him disconnected from his family, especially in his later years. Relatives revealed that he often lived alone in his Toronto home, haunted by a sense of abandonment from the industry that once embraced him. Though his role as Hearst earned him public affection, it couldn't erase the emptiness that crept in once the lights dimmed. George R. Robertson died on January 29, 2023, at the age of 89. His estate was estimated at around $1 million, mostly from property and film royalties. Though his passing carried no dramatic twist or public scandal, his tragedy was the silence, being remembered and forgotten all at once, as the line between stardom and solitude blurred into memory. Andrew Rubin as George Martine. Andrew Harold Rubin was born on June 22, 1946, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, into a scholarly Jewish family. After graduating from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, Rubin emerged as a promising face on American television, with roles in Shazam, The Jeffersons, and Hometown. But it was at age 38 that he made his lasting mark as George Martine, the charming, mischievous ladies' man of the original Police Academy, 1984. Rather than opening doors to stardom, George Martine turned out to be the peak of Rubin's career. Subsequent roles were sparse, and he gradually faded into supporting parts, transient faces in the background of television screens. With fame never arriving as expected, Rubin withdrew from the public eye, nearly vanishing from Hollywood's radar. Few knew that behind his humor and charisma lay a decades-long struggle with nicotine addiction, the slow killer that ultimately claimed him. On October 5, 2015, Andrew Rubin died in Los Angeles from lung cancer at the age of 69. He had married once, but kept his private life largely out of the spotlight, spending his final years in solitude. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at approximately $1 million, including a modest Los Angeles home, where he spent his days painting, writing, and living far from the limelight. Ted Ross as Captain Reed. Theodore Ross Roberts was born on June 30, 1934, in Zanesville, Ohio. When he was 50 years old, he appeared in Police Academy, 1984, as Captain Reed. Though his screen role was brief, Ross was already an acclaimed performer, having won a Tony Award for playing the lion in The Wiz, a role he reprised in the film version alongside Michael Jackson and Diana Ross. Still, despite his stage accolades and powerful presence, his film career never soared as many expected. Raised by a nightclub singer mother, Ross was captivated early by the spotlight of West 5th Street's club scene. After military service, he traveled across America singing, eventually landing in Los Angeles, where a small musical role opened the door to Broadway. With his commanding voice, magnetic stage presence, and undeniable charisma, Ross often found himself typecast in supporting roles, even while sharing the screen with legends like Richard Pryor and James Earl Jones. His personal life was equally turbulent. A failed marriage left him reclusive and emotionally distant. Friends described lavish parties he once hosted, but behind the revelry was a lonely soul yearning for deeper recognition. In 1997, he returned to Dayton and opened a jazz club called Your Place, where he occasionally performed. In 1998, he suffered a stroke and never fully recovered. Ted Ross died on September 3, 2002, at Good Samaritan Hospital at the age of 68. His estate, estimated at $1 million, consisted mainly of a small home in Dayton, where he quietly ended a life that once touched stardom but remained haunted by unmet potential. Deborah Lee Scott as Violet Fackler. Deborah Lee Scott was born on April 2, 1953, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. When she was 31 years old, she appeared in Police Academy, 1984, as Violet Fackler, the spirited, quirky wife of Douglas Fackler. Though a minor comedic role, it made her a recognizable face in the golden age of American sitcoms. Outside the screen, however, Scott's life was full of hidden wounds. Following earlier success in Mary Hartman, Welcome Back, Cotter, and Angie, she gradually retreated from acting and worked as a talent agent in New York. Tragedy struck repeatedly. Her marriage to actor Jonathan Frakes ended, and she endured the greatest heartbreak of her life when her fiancé, police officer John Dennis Levi, was killed during the September 11th attacks. According to her sister, Deborah Lee never recovered. She descended into heavy alcoholism, became increasingly reclusive, and battled severe depression. Just days after her 52nd birthday, Deborah Lee Scott died in her sleep at her home on Amelia Island, Florida. The official cause: complications from cirrhosis, linked to years of alcohol abuse. Her estate was worth approximately $300,000, a modest sum compared to the fame she once enjoyed. Doug Lennox as Thug Leader. Douglas Joseph Lennox was born on January 21, 1938, in Canada. When he was 46 years old, he played the lead antagonist in Police Academy, 1984, a gang leader whose stern, icy demeanor left a lasting impression. Off-screen, Lennox was a remarkably versatile artist, actor, author, and longtime radio personality. He began his broadcasting career in 1965 and soon became one of the most familiar voices on Canadian radio before transitioning into film and television. He appeared in dozens of series including The New Avengers, Cold Squad, Relic Hunter, Earth, Final Conflict, and X-Men: The Last Stand. Yet despite his versatility and persistence, Lennox never landed a breakout leading role. His villainous turn in Police Academy stood out, but it remained a flicker of recognition in an otherwise long and understated artistic journey. Beyond acting, Lennox was known for his intellect and curiosity, captured in his popular book Now You Know, The Big Book of Answers, where he revealed a lesser-known side of himself, one driven by wonder, knowledge, and a hunger to understand the world. But his personal life was far less smooth. 2 failed marriages left emotional scars. According to those close to him, Lennox struggled with bouts of depression, haunted by the sense that Hollywood had left him behind, that his talent and dedication had been reduced to a single remembered villain. Doug Lennox passed away in his sleep on November 28, 2015, in Toronto, at the age of 77. The cause was complications from pneumonia. He left behind an estate valued at approximately $400,000, including a modest home in Toronto, where he had spent his final years in quiet solitude. He was a gifted storyteller, a memorable antagonist, but perhaps most of all, a creative spirit the world turned away from too soon. Hugh Wilson as Angry Driver. Hugh Hamilton Wilson, Jr., born on August 21, 1943, in Miami, Florida, was one of the most gifted creators in television and film during the 1980s and 1990s. When he was 41 years old, he not only directed but also made a brief on-screen appearance as the Angry Driver in Police Academy, 1984, a surprise comedy hit that became a global phenomenon and launched a long-running film franchise. But that was only a sliver of his remarkable journey. Wilson was the creator of the acclaimed sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati, which earned multiple Emmy nominations and won a Humanitas Prize. He also directed The First Wives Club, 1996, a landmark feminist comedy that grossed over $181 million worldwide and revitalized the careers of Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, and Diane Keaton. Behind the success, however, was a complex personal life. Though he married Charters Smith in 1979 and had 5 children, Wilson had endured 2 prior divorces, partly due to the strains of fame and relentless work. He once admitted that the spotlight left him emotionally drained, that his career had eclipsed his personal life. A devout Catholic and later a guest lecturer at the University of Virginia, he carried the quiet burden of feeling he had missed too much precious time with his family. Wilson passed away on January 14, 2018, in Charlottesville, Virginia, at the age of 74, after battling lung cancer and emphysema. He left behind an estate worth approximately $2 million, including a modest home in Virginia, his peaceful retreat after decades spent navigating the high-pressure world of Hollywood. Joyce Gordon as Mrs. Thompson. Joyce Gordon, born on March 25, 1929, in Des Moines, Iowa, was not only an actress, but also one of the strongest female pioneers in American television history. When she was 49 years old, she appeared as Mrs. Thompson in Police Academy, 1984, a small role that helped shape the film's signature comedic tone. However, with a decades-long career already behind her, this role was merely a quiet footnote in her long journey of groundbreaking, often unsung, achievements. In the 1950s, Joyce Gordon became the first woman to deliver a live advertisement on network television, an almost unthinkable act for a woman at that time. She was also the first female anchor at a nationally broadcast political convention, and the first woman to serve as president of a local chapter of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, leading the New York branch beginning in 1966. Far beyond the label of the Lady with the Glasses, a nickname given to her affectionately by the media, Joyce became the recognizable voice behind countless automated phone recordings that millions of Americans heard daily, from "The number you have dialed is not in service" to "Please dial 1 before the area code." She was also the English voice for European cinema legends like Claudia Cardinale and Jeanne Moreau, including in Once Upon a Time in the West. On radio, she voiced Cherry in Mark Trail and Barbara Miller in My Son Jeep. Quiet yet enduring, she was an indispensable part of America's audiovisual culture for decades. Joyce's personal life was modest and contemplative. She spent more than 50 years with actor Bernard Grant and raised 2 children. But her final years passed quietly and somewhat forgotten. She died on February 28, 2020, at the age of 90, not in 2008, as some reports mistakenly claimed, and left behind a vast cultural legacy, though her estimated net worth was only about $500,000. For all she pioneered, contributed, and created, what may have saddened her most is that the world only remembered her for a small role in Police Academy. Beth Amos as Little Old Lady. Beth Amos was born on January 1, 1916, in St. Catharines, Ontario, and became one of Canada's veteran actresses, a face more at home on stage than on screen. When she was 68 years old, she made a brief appearance in Police Academy, 1984, as a tiny elderly woman, but with her natural presence and quiet charm, she left a lasting impression in a film overflowing with slapstick comedy. Yet Beth Amos's life was far from humorous. After moving to Toronto at the age of 19 to study drama, World War II broke out, freezing much of Canadian theater in its tracks. She remained committed to the craft, but her career was mostly confined to supporting roles. Despite her talent and early forays into playwriting, she never secured a leading part that allowed her to break through. Deep down, she often felt out of sync with her era, forgotten amid the rising tide of younger performers and commercial television. Her personal life was equally fraught. She married Robert Bruce Amos in 1943 and had 5 children, one of whom, Janet Amos, would go on to become a prominent stage artist herself. But their marriage was reportedly strained, especially over finances. Some close to Beth shared that she had to sell off personal belongings in later years just to get by. Her career faded into obscurity, and her private life bore the weight of unspoken wounds. Beth Amos passed away suddenly on January 31, 1996, during a morning performance of Henrik Ibsen's The Master Builder at Toronto's Royal Alexandra Theatre. She was 80 years old, departing quietly, without fanfare, much like the life she had lived. At the time of her death, her estate was estimated at only $200,000, and few remembered that the woman who once made them laugh in Police Academy had also been a silent cornerstone of Canadian theater. Michael J. Reynolds as office executive. Michael John Reynolds, born on August 15, 1939 in Toronto, Canada, was one of cinema's most quietly diligent actors, and one of its most overlooked. When he was 45 years old, he made a fleeting appearance in Police Academy, 1984, as an office worker, a role so minor that few could recall his face. Yet that brief moment perfectly symbolized his entire career. Always at the edge of the spotlight, never its focus. With over 100 film credits to his name, from The Descent, Part 2 to Blown Away and The Girl in a Swing, Reynolds was a familiar face, if you happen to notice the characters without names. People like him are the backbone of cinema, not because they're famous, but because they're always present, always ready, always contributing, even if no one applauds. Michael's personal life mirrored the quiet tone of his professional one. He married Catherine Reynolds, though the marriage was believed to be brief and without children. He spent much of his later years in the UK, living a discreet life in Milverton, Somerset. Michael Reynolds passed away on March 22, 2018, at the age of 78, with the cause of death never publicly disclosed. His estimated at around $500,000, including a house in Toronto, where his dream of filmmaking began. But that seemed to fully take flight. The tragedy of Michael J. Reynolds wasn't failure. It was invisibility. That he was always there, and yet never Kay Hotty as surprise party lady. Catherine Mary Craven Clark, née Hotty, was born on November 8, 1926 in Canada. She was a quiet yet resilient actress who graced countless stage productions and television shows over the course of several decades. When she was 57 years old, she made a blink-and-you'll-miss-it appearance in Police Academy, 1984, as the woman organizing the surprise party, a role so small it could easily be overlooked, but one that nonetheless made audiences pause and remember the name Kay Hotty. Hotty began her acting journey at Toronto's Hart House Theatre and spent time working in London before marrying actor John Clark. Their marriage quickly unraveled in the 1960s due to infidelity and financial strain, prompting her to return to Toronto alone with their young son. It was a turning point, both personally and professionally. She continued acting in supporting roles on CBC television, but widespread fame never followed. Though she briefly appeared on Broadway in Love and Libel, 1960, and is best remembered for her role in the horror film Funeral Home, 1980, Hotty could never quite escape the label of a perennial supporting actress. Her personal life was marked by pain. After 2 failed marriages, she turned to painting as a form of emotional healing, yet those close to her recalled a persistent emptiness that nothing ever seemed to fill. Kay Hotty died on June 11, 2021, in Toronto at the age of 94. Her estate was valued at approximately $250,000, mostly from her aging home. She received no major honors and little press, leaving this world as quietly as she had lived. The stars of Police Academy left behind unforgettable laughter, even though many departed this world under tragic circumstances. Their legacy of humor and optimism lives on in every frame of film. Which Police Academy character do you remember most? Share your memories in the comments, and hit subscribe to never miss another tribute to the legends of the screen.